Hey. So, I wanted to touch a little bit on serverless. So, for those of you who don't know this term, serverless is basically the term for when you're running your infrastructure or like your application through a series of cloud services such as like AWS's Lambda function, Google Cloud's functions, and like Azure Cloud and a few of these other great things. And the idea behind this movement is that most of the time what you want as an application developer is simply a function that responds either to an event somewhere or a HTTP endpoint where like it's the same idea. You have a function that is going to have an event trigger. Either somebody makes a request to your server or to that function, or somebody uploads something to one of your media buckets or something like that. The function runs and you get the benefit of not having to like think about scaling and about like all that type of stuff. You don't have to think so much about loads and all that good stuff. And most of these are pay per usage, so it becomes fairly cheap for you, especially when you're just starting out, to maintain and like create this really nice little infrastructure where you can have like several, like 10, 20 endpoints or 20 different functions, and instead of paying a constant cost for running the server, it will only run when somebody's actually making a request. And Google and Amazon and Microsoft can optimize and do all that stuff, and basically you then allocate memory usage for what is in essence the time you're using, or like the computational, like the amount of load that your function is going to use. So that's pretty cool, I think, especially for people who start like thinking about starting a new company, or they want to build something and focus more on like writing business logic and then maintaining a large-scale system. And I've seen a few talks where people have like fairly, at least that's the way that they describe it, a fairly large success rate with using this system of working. I think somebody was like 20 million users or something like that, and like they're running their entire business. I mean, apparently to me, like a startup to me is a fairly like a company with like 5 people or something like that, and they have several, like they have 10 like 20, 30, 50 people or something like that. I don't know when you stop being a startup, but to them they were a startup. And I think that this is a great way for us like the smaller companies to work. Now there is a downside to this, and the downside, even though you get a lot of this for free and it's cheaper for you, and you're like, for the most part, you're going to you not have to think about all these architectural and like ops related issues, which I think it makes a lot of sense especially when you're just starting out and you don't have the type of resources. Because trust me, I know what it is to try and build an architecture that is right for a really big company, but it was a bad decision I made. I wasted so much time on that. It was a really bad decision for a small company, a startup, especially with just one developer. Really bad decision. So I went over to like these functions, and I got really productive really quickly, I have to say. Now, as I said, the downside is that Google and Amazon and Microsoft, they're not doing this out of the kindness of their heart. Their business is vendor lock-in. And vendor locking basically means, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, is that they want you to use a tool that they provide, because the idea is that if they can get you to use their tool and start building along like building your infrastructure and your logic and your business basically with their tool set, you will be caught. They will have you as a paying customer forever. That's what Java does. That's what .NET has been doing since fucking day one basically. And it's also like, remember I talk a lot about Angular, same idea. They're doing the exact same thing. So vendor locking is something that is it's a tricky thing, especially when it comes to serverless. I mean, I have some colleagues that say, oh, well, I will never use this because I don't want to deal with vendor locking. And I think that that's not really, it's not like, yes, you are getting a vendor locking situation to some extent. The interfaces are still fairly generic, and I'm not saying that it would be easy to migrate from one vendor to another, but I try to think of it as different levels of maturity in your application development. So if you're just starting out and you want to iterate quickly and prototype stuff, and you want to get your business going, you want to see if there's some traction, you want to figure out if you can make this work, then I wonder if it's such a, like, I mean, you haven't really most likely matured your company to a point where you're going to have issues with a vendor locking situation. I mean, you don't even know if it's going to be an issue, because let's be honest, I mean, what guarantees do you have that one vendor is going to be better than another? And if I think about it from a business economics position, I think the benefits of being able to move very quickly and not spending as much time as possible on developing the idea or the business, instead of working on with all these other things that you will have to deal with if you run your own service. And like, you remember, even if you run your own application server, you're going to have to pay for uptime, which in theory is going to be more expensive for you. Like, you have absolutely, with this system, I mean, I run my startup on a free tier. We don't pay anything. I'm not saying we have a lot of users, but we have some users, and most of the time we don't have to pay for anything. It's completely free, which is great. And when we get to the paying tier, it's still cheaper than running the service constantly. So for us, it makes a lot of sense. For a large company, maybe not. But I don't think that vendor locking the argument is valid, and if you are in a situation where that becomes an issue for you, or in the future maybe your provider is going to do something really nasty and all of a sudden you're stuck with them, yes, this is a possibility. But I don't think that, you've probably heard me say before, like, let there be a problem before you fix it. And I think that serverless solves more problems than it causes.